So, hello everyone. We are Team 1046 for the Bionic Tigers, and this is our rookie workshop. Hold on, let me turn on my camera real quick. Hi. This is our workshop, and we're going to be talking specifically about programming in Kotlin today. And if you want to hit the next slide, whoever's controlling that, Aaron, I think that's you. Thank you. Okay. So who exactly are we? We are an 11th year team. We are also made up of 11 members, ironically. As you can see, we've won quite a bit of awards. We've been around for a while. We've previously won every award, and we've also been an Ohio Showcase team for 10 years. And like I said, we've been around for a long time, and kind of just the purpose of this workshop is we've been around a long time. We've learned a lot of little tips and tricks in our time, and we want to give back to you guys and kind of teach you some things that we wish we had known when we were getting started. So yeah, we're going to impart our learnings from our experience to you. We want to give our rookie teams a jump start so you can spend more time building robots and winning awards, and then just some little niche trade tips and tricks from our experience. And today we're going to be talking about, this is our final workshop, we're going to be talking about programming in Kotlin.
Okay. I'm Erin. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them when we can or at the next question break. We'll have question breaks in the middle of the slideshow. All right, so first we're going to go over some general information about programming for FTC. So first is version control. Version control basically lets you keep track of your code and store different versions of it online so that you can go back and look at older versions. It also allows you to share your code with other team members. It lets you use things like branches that you can look into for better code organization. And these are things like GitHub and GitLab and Atlassian Git. Um, some next is FTC libraries. These are like basically pre-written like libraries of code that you can use in your robot. So these are things like Roadrunner and Pedro pathing, which are for your drivetrain movement. And then there's things like even Easy OpenCV and TensorFlow for detecting things with your camera. And then there's FTC dashboard that allows you to view variables in real time, and you can graph them as well. There's FTC lib, which is kind of a good starting point for most teams. It has things like odometry built into it and commands. Um, Axiom is something that our team has created. It's a framework for you to build your code off of, and that should be released around kickoff. So once it's released, you can go ahead and use that in your code if you're interested. And then if there are new libraries that are posted on the FTC Discord server that you can look at. So to download code onto your robot from your computer, you're going to want to either get a download cable and connect your computer to your control hub using the USB port in the control hub. And if you're using Android Studio, which we recommend, you can use ADB, which is a wireless download method. And there's a link here. If we can somebody post that in the chat for setting up ADB if you're interested? So to get help with your FTC programming, you can look at FTC Discord servers and the FTC docs. So Discord servers are good if you have specific questions and you need help from a real person, you can get somebody to help you out. There's lots of people who are very knowledgeable on there that can help you. The FTC docs are good for more basic information. And then there's also the SDK Java docs that are good. You can also just ask Google. Library websites that can help you figure out how to use a certain library, and then you can also ask other teams. And you can feel free to email us as well. Or message us on Discord, I think. There's a question right here. Does anyone have any questions?
There's a question asking if the slides will be shared.
I we can share the slides. I think we can email them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We will be dropping a YouTube video with kind of the recording of this meeting at the end, and I will put the link to our slideshow and all the other resources we mentioned in the chat at the end in the description.
Okay. I think we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on. If that's anybody has anything left, you can just unmute really quickly. Okay. So next we're gonna go over the basics of Kotlin. Um, So Kotlin is a programming language like Java that is new and it's growing rapidly. It's made by JetBrains and it's used by Android. It's interoperable with Java, which means that everything that works with Java will also work with Kotlin. So things like libraries that are made for Java will also work for Kotlin. It's an inferred language, which means you don't have to specify specific types for every single variable that you create. It's designed to be very readable. The syntax is very simple and it's much easier to understand for other people reading your code. It's recognized as one of the main languages used in FTC and it works on the Java virtual machine. Kotlin is very easy to read and write, like I said earlier. Java is a little more verbose than Kotlin. So Kotlin's syntax is much more like easy to understand and it's more intuitive and it's also easier to read once you've already gotten code written. It's easy to learn because of that too. And like I said, Java is more syntax heavy, so you need more extra code for the same code in Java. You could write it in less lines in Kotlin. Kotlin also has measures in place to make sure you don't make mistakes like null safety, which we'll go over later. It has lots of additional features and resources, and any like libraries that works for Java will also work for Kotlin, like I said earlier. And it's also easy to get help with Kotlin within the FTC community. So some real world applications for Kotlin. It's good to know because it's largely used for mobile app development, which is very relevant and profitable. So if you're interested in doing something like that, it's a good language to get familiar with. The industry standard is slowly changing from Java into Kotlin. So many Java-based applications are being changed to Kotlin, and it's also beginning to be used in the field of data science. There are lots of ways to learn Kotlin, such as the official docs. They're a good place to start and to get your more specific questions answered. It's a very thorough overview of Kotlin. It can also be taught for free on many different platforms. And one thing that we recommend is Kotlin Cones, which is an interactive and step-by-step tutorial for learning Kotlin. So it gives you little problems that you have to solve by using Kotlin's features. And then you can also ask questions in the FTC Discord, and you can utilize your sponsorships to figure out how to use Kotlin. Um, so an IDE is the software where you write your code, and Kotlin works on many different IDEs like Android Studio, IntelliJ, and Visual Studio Code. It has build tools like Gradle and Maven, which let you add external libraries to your code base just like Java. In order to implement Kotlin for use in FTC, you have to set up the build tools for Kotlin with the FTC SDK. And there are lots of guides on how to do it, but we recommend one, and it's on the official It's First Docs website. So here's a little overview of Kotlin versus Java. Kotlin is easy to learn and it's more readable because of its easy syntax and more intuitive syntax. It's newer, but it's gaining popularity very quickly. Both Kotlin and Java will control your robot just fine, and they're also both text-based, and they share the same libraries since any library you can use with Java, you can use with Kotlin. Java is more widely used and it is the industry standard at the moment. And there are more resources that are written in Java. It's a question break again.
Looks like you're rocking it, Aaron. Keep on rolling.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go over some major differences between Kotlin and Java and also just introduce some of the cool features that Kotlin has. One of the biggest reasons you should choose Kotlin over Java or blocks or any other language that you can use is just the standard library. It has a lot of stuff built into it to help make your life easier and to make you have to implement less stuff on your own. So it's more practical, safer to use, like you won't get as many errors. And some examples of what's included in the standard library is array lists, dictionaries and hash maps, and also strings. And there's also a lot more. So a major difference between Kotlin and Java is that the standard library is a lot bigger since it's built on top of Java. So anything that you can use in Java can be used in Kotlin, and Kotlin just extends off of that. So one difference between Kotlin and Java is the way that you declare lambdas. Lambdas are essentially just functions that are like easier to write. Like you can store them in a variable, you can pass them into a function. So in this example, we have a sort function, which can sort a list of numbers given a function that you pass in. So on the left side, you can see that we define it directly inside of the function definition. We have func, which takes in two ints and returns a Boolean. But if we look at the Java side, you have to declare an interface, and then you have to put a run in there. So Kotlin just makes it significantly easier to use lambdas, and also lambdas are a massive part of our code base this year, and it would not have been possible without Kotlin. So collections are a part of the standard library. Kotlin's collections have a lot of stuff built into them. You almost never need to write your own functions for a collection, like an array list, a hash map, a map, or anything like that. So in the example, we filter every number from the list, and if it's greater than or equal to 10, we keep it. So the Kotlin code and the Java code does the exact same thing. It's just Kotlin is way less verbose and it's built directly into the filter or built directly into the array instead of needing to cast it to a stream like you have to do in Java. Strings, Kotlin also has a better string templating system, which just means that you can put variables inside of strings. So both of these codes would print presenting programming workshop or presenting 10464's programming workshop. But the way that you do it on Kotlin is way easier to do, and also it allows you to have more control over what you do. So one of the biggest advantages of Kotlin is null safety. If we have like, for example, a function that can say get a specimen that's on the camera. So if the camera can see a specimen and it would return it, but if it can't see one, it would just not return anything. So in Kotlin, we can handle that really easily with the question mark operator. In Java, we have to do an if statement and then we have to keep on doing if statements if that has more stuff further down the line. Kotlin also has stuff where you can scope into that. Like you can run this block of code if it exists, and if it doesn't, then it won't do anything. In Java, that would be a lot harder to do. Extension functions are also another very powerful part of Kotlin. Um, they allow you to add basically your own functions to any class that already exists. In the example, we directly add the is palindrome function to the string. So instead of doing it as a function and then having to pass the string in, we can just call the string dot is palindrome. So we can do a function directly on the string, and it's way more clear when you write it. And it also gives you the chance to use, or it gives you a more powerful way of doing stuff, which we'll show later. So I know that was a lot. So if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat.
There is one question in the chat,
Yep.
Alex, but I'm not as
Uh,
skilled with programming as you are, so you can probably interpret this way better than me.
so yeah, functions are essentially just equal to lambdas, except functions have their own like concrete definition. A lambda, you can just pass it around anywhere. And arrays are useful in multiple places in FTC. Our drivetrain uses one to store the motors so we can iterate through them a lot easier. And there's also a lot more places where you can use them. Not really. It just, you can assume that functions are equal to lambdas. It's just you declare lambdas inside of something. And I'll send the Kotlin docs website, which has more info on lambdas that can probably explain it better than I can. Is there any more questions? Okay, I think we're good to move on. So now we're going to go over some of the code that we wrote this year. I won't be explaining how it does stuff, but I'll tell you what it does and the benefits that it has, and also how it's different from what you would do it in Java. So our autonomous control is heavily influenced by our Axiom framework. It allows us to create groups of different chunks of code. And if you look at the left side, you can see that we have a sequential command group, which just steps down the line. So it would score, and then it would go pick up the first sample, and then it would score the first sample. And on the right side, you can see an example of a concurrent command group, which would just run all of that at the same time, which is very useful if you want to maximize the efficiency of your robot. This is an example of enums and setters in Kotlin. Um, Enums in Kotlin you can store values inside of, which makes it a lot easier to write something like an arm because the down position can have a value, the middle position can have a value, and the up position can have a value. And then on the right side, you can see a setter. Basically, whenever that variable gets set, that function gets called. And so it would automatically move the servo based on what position you set it to, instead of having to do that inside a function or something else, which just really cleans up your code. So here's an example of a custom getter, which is the opposite of a setter. It just allows you to get the result of the, or get that variable. This is what we use to make to keep us inside the expansion limit. And the getters and setters have a lot of possibilities, and you can do significant amount with them. So this is what I was talking about when I said you can do way more event stuff with extension functions. Um, you don't need to understand the top bit of code to know what it does. It just, whenever we call hardware map.getByName and pass in a name, so let's say we wanted to get the claw servo. If you look at the bottom example, you can see how much easier that is than how you would do it normally because Kotlin's inferred. So if we were passing that class servo into a function, we wouldn't even need to say that as a servo. We would just have that info immediately. And this is an example of a when block for how we control a robot using a gamepad. Um, this is pretty much just a switch statement in Java. It's a little less complex though. Basically, whenever you press the controller, it will run the press branch. Whenever you release a button on the controller, it'll run the release branch. And whenever you hold a button, it will keep running that command, which is just a chunk of code. And that's what we call it an axiom command. So if anyone has any questions, you can send it in the chat. And if you want us to explain how we do something, you can send it in the chat and we can give you more info on that later. I think our GitHub is also public. So if you want to look at all of our code this year, I'll send a link to that in the chat too.
I think you can keep going, Alex.
Yeah. Aaron, if you want to close it off.
I can find the unmute button. All right, thank you for coming. This is our last workshop for this season. But thank you. And if you have any other questions, you have our email and our Twitter and Instagram. And feel free to contact us with any questions or issues you might have. We'll be happy to help.